Welcome to my channel, Jen Lefforge here. Have you ever thought about running Disney? I bet you have. That's probably why you clicked on this video to begin with. What we're gonna do today is talk about Run Disney. All of the races, which one might be right for you, which one is my favorite, which one I think is best for beginners, and which ones I now stay away from. So join me as we talk about all things Run Disney and we go through all of the races you can do at the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and pulled up, forgive me for looking down, on my laptop all of the races that Disney offers. Sadly, you can no longer run at Disneyland in California. There's hopes that maybe someday that will come back. But for now, all of the races that Run Disney does, with a couple of exceptions that we'll talk about, are done at the Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. The good thing about that is there's consistency there. You can get really used to traveling to Orlando. The bad thing is I'm super sad that we don't get to go to California anymore to race. But hopefully I'll get back to California soon. Disneyland was my first park. It's right near where I was born. And Run Disney, bring them back. We would love that. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through the order that they have them listed on the current calendar based on what one is coming up in just a few weeks, and working our way all the way through the Princess, which just happened. There are several different Run Disney events throughout the year. The one coming up in 4 weeks is the Star Wars Half Marathon. Now, Star Wars Half Marathon weekend is really become my very, very favorite. Why I love Star Wars: The Dark Side. Number one, the time of year works out really, really well for me. It's kind of, usually it's a little bit past the spring break crowds. Last year, I think the race itself was the Sunday after Easter, so that made it a little more crowded than usual. But in the past, we have found, I think this is the 4th year that Run Disney is doing the Star Wars race. I'll put something on the screen if I'm wrong about that, but I've done it every year that they've had it. The weather's usually really good. The people are there to have a really, really good time. And it's just overall, although the weather is not always great for racing, and that's the one thing you may want to consider. April in Orlando can be, shall we say, a little muggy. I happen to train in Atlanta, so that's not that big of a deal for me, but if humidity is a big factor for you, then the April race may not be your best call. So, but if you love Star Wars and that works well with your calendar, whether that be your work calendar or whatever that may be, then definitely I would recommend the Star Wars race. Actually, what they have is one of their virtual races next on the calendar. I actually haven't done the virtual races, so if you have, please comment below and let me know how that's been. Obviously, a virtual race is exactly like it sounds. You don't run at Walt Disney World, you run wherever you want. I mean, I suppose you could run at Walt Disney World if that's what you wanted, but you can run at home, you can run another race, whatever you want to do. You let Run Disney know what you ran, and you have to use, I believe, either Runkeeper or some other app to prove to them that you actually put in the mileage. You get a t-shirt and a medal, just like a regular Run Disney race, obviously way less expensive for a variety of different reasons. I'm just pulling up the virtual running shorts to see what the price is for that. Hold please. Boy, they really do hide the prices on here. Okay, here we go. Entry fees. Run Disney virtual running shorts 5K is $40. And then the whole series is $142 if you do the 5K in June, a 5K in July, and a 5K in August, and then I think you get even an additional separate medal. So if you're really about the bling, that might be for you. I'm not so much about the bling, I'm more about the experience. I love to travel, I love to see my friends, and I love to actually run the race with all my Run Disney friends. So that's not necessarily something that I would spend the money to do, because I could easily just run a local 5K if that's what I wanted. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind, that you can run the virtual series as well. So the next up on the calendar will be September 20th to 23rd. Now this is the only race that we're gonna talk about that I have not physically run, and it is on my bucket list. So if you are looking for a charming travel companion to fly all expenses paid to Paris in September, please pick up the phone and call, because I would love to do the Disneyland Paris Half Marathon weekend. I have seen pictures of the course. You're not in the parks very much, but just you're in a lot of farmland in France, and it looks gorgeous, y'all. I would love to run this race. So I can't really give you much advice about that, except for if you were planning a trip to Europe anyway, I think that would be a fantastic way to probably start your trip, and then you could celebrate doing some traveling around France. And what in the world would be wrong with that? Nothing. So can't really speak about that personally, but it sounds like it would be a great time. Next up is Disney's Wine and Dine Half. Now, Wine and Dine Half for this next year, last time I checked, the 5K and 10K were already sold out, but there were still spots for the half marathon and the challenge. They may not be available anymore though, so if that's a race that you wanna do, I would get on and register right away, or I would check with your travel provider, because sometimes the travel providers, the travel agents that work for free, will have bibs long after Run Disney says registration is closed, so that's a really good tip. It's gonna be November 1st through 4th. Now, I have run this race 3 times, but I ran it when it was a nighttime race, and I loved it when it was a nighttime race, but I won't go into that because we can't go back and change the past. It is now a daytime race. I have not done it since it switched to a traditional morning race. The big pro about this is it's going on during the Wine and Dine, the Food and Wine, sorry, not Wine and Dine, the Food and Wine Festival at Epcot. And so Food and Wine is a wonderful time of year to be at Epcot. Lots of food vendors, lots of booths, lots of great drinks, really great party atmosphere, super fun. Problem is, it can be a little crowded, and not only a little crowded, but a little expensive and a little hard to get the room that you want in Orlando. So if the Wine and Dine is something you're thinking about, my #1 tip for Wine and Dine would be plan ahead. Register early, get those reservations early, because it is a very crowded time of year, and do be prepared. One year that I was at the Wine and Dine, I think it was the last Sunday of Food and Wine Festival, and y'all, I have never seen Epcot so crowded. I mean, we were literally like trying to move through the crowds like this. It was super, super difficult. So that's something to be aware of, that it does happen during a very popular time of year at Walt Disney World. Okay, so that's in November. So the next race that we're coming up on is the Walt Disney World Marathon Weekend, and that this year is January 9th to 13th. Okay, here is why. This is my favorite race weekend. So there is just something about Marathon Weekend that I cannot quite put my finger on. Maybe it's the size of it, maybe it's all of the dopey runners, and for those of you who don't know, people who run the dopey are committing to running a 5K on Thursday, a 10K on Friday, a half marathon on Saturday, and the full marathon on Sunday. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So it does draw a certain level of runner that's maybe a little more committed than some of the other races, or some would say maybe need to be committed a little more than the other races. Haha. But it's making funny jokes here on the vlog. About Marathon Weekend is it seems to draw just a higher caliber of professional runners. Now, I am not a professional runner. I am mediocre at best, but I love hearing from professional runners. I like seeing professional runners walking around. I like waving to professional runners. And the thing I love is you can feel like we're all part of the big same happy family, even though they average a 6.5 minute mile and I average a 11.5 minute mile. We still feel like we're part of the same group, and I love that. What I did this past year, and I will probably do again this year, is I ran the half marathon and then I cheered for the full. Y'all, if you have not cheered for a full marathon somewhere, you need to do this. It is a life-changing experience. And although I do love running the full at Disney World, no, that's not true. I don't love running full marathons. Not true. I'm lying. Cheering for it is just life inspiring. So definitely recommend considering that. You can do the cheer squad and like be an official cheerperson through Disney, or you can do what I do and just hang out at the boardwalk or one of the other spots to cheer. One tip on that, don't try to move locations. It is so stressful to get around the Disney parks during Marathon Weekend pretty much at all. So just go to one place, cheer for all of the runners. Oh, that's the other thing. don't just cheer for your runner. Like if you're there cheering for someone in particular, don't just cheer for that one person. Cheer for everybody. There's nothing worse than when you're running and you're doing your best and there's a whole group of people that are just standing there staring. If you're gonna be out there cheering, please cheer for all of the runners. But marathon weekend, I can't even put words to it. You have to go and experience it. Unfortunately, once you do, it becomes a thing that you kind of feel compelled that you have to do every year. The years that I've missed it and all of my running friends are tweeting and talking about it, it's just, the FOMO. The FOMO, it's real, y'all. It's a big deal. Marathon weekend, especially for your first time, definitely consider doing one of the races marathon weekend. You will not regret it. Now, here is my little disclaimer about marathon weekend. It's crowded. There's just no getting around that. The expo is crowded. Getting from place to place is crowded. The parks are crowded. Especially on years where it falls kind of within Christmas break. That doesn't happen, I don't think, this next year, but it's a busy weekend at Disney World. So you have to go with correct expectations, and I actually think that's true of all the Run Disney weekends. If you're expecting there to be hardly anybody there, it's just not gonna happen. Although I think the race coming up in April is your best bet. But definitely January is my favorite for first timers. I think the expo has the best speakers. I think the vendors are fantastic. I think the energy is great. And if you're there, you have to let me know because I just love meeting new people marathon weekend. Okay, and then on the race calendar, next up is the behemoth of Disney races, and that is Princess Half Marathon. Insert magical music here. So, Princess Half Marathon. I have done it 6 times, I think. Yes, 6 times. The last 2 times I did it, I didn't have the best experience. I kind of feel like that weekend has become a bit of a, gosh, you guys don't get mad at me if Princess is your favorite. I feel like it's become a bit of a mob scene. The last 2 years that Sarah and I ran it, we felt like the course was incredibly crowded. We felt like every place was unbearably crowded. And it just wasn't as much fun for us. Again, there is something about it being a predominantly female race that does make for a super fun time. I know plenty of people that go out there with groups of girlfriends and have the best weekend ever. For me though, this has become my least favorite. I know, don't kill me. It's become my least favorite Run Disney weekend. I think now that I've experienced Star Wars and kind of the fewer crowds, and like this year, I don't even think the Star Wars half is sold out, whereas Princess usually sells out just like that. That's good snapping, right? So yeah, I like Princess, don't get me wrong. If a group of girlfriends are going to Princess, I definitely recommend Princess, but it is not my favorite race. So I'm gonna go through really quick, what are my favorite races for different types of runners? If you are an experienced runner and you just want the experience of running at Disney and you're hoping to go during a little bit less crowded time of year, Star Wars is gonna be my #1 pick for you. You are gonna deal with warmer weather, but if you're an experienced runner, you probably know how to deal with that, so I'm not worried about you there, and I think you should definitely consider doing the Star Wars race. If you are a first timer and you are nervous and you want all of the Run Disney races are obviously first time friendly. But if you want the best atmosphere and the most kind of all about the running, I would do marathon weekend. I would get there early, I would stay a few days after and really soak all of that in because boy, oh boy, do you feel like a real runner when you participate in Run Disney Marathon weekend. So definitely consider running one of the races, and if you're not gonna run the full marathon, consider cheering for the full marathon. Otherwise, really any of the Run Disney events, you'll have a great experience. They are expensive and you do want to understand logistics of the situation. It's going to take you a while. Yes, you have to get on board you have to be on buses by 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, which means you're getting up at 2:30. It's very early in the morning, especially for those of you that are coming from other than East Coast time. That can be a challenge in and of itself, and maybe a good reason to come in a few days in advance. But one more tip on that. If you are combining this with a family vacation, definitely do the race first, family vacation after. I'm gonna say that again. Race first, family vacation after, and here's why. You put on your legs between 8 and 10 miles typically just touring around Walt Disney World. I know, Look it up, it's true. What you don't wanna do is, you know, arrive on a Tuesday, tour parks, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then run a 10K Saturday or run a half marathon Sunday, or God forbid, run a marathon on Sunday. Your legs will be trashed. Don't do that to yourself. The other reason I don't like to have the family vacation first is the whole time, especially if it's one of your first races, instead of thinking about your family, you're gonna be thinking about your race. And then it's gonna be over and it's gonna be time to come home. I recommend front-ending the race and then spending your family vacation after. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll have a great time. Questions about Run Disney? Comment below. If anything that I've said you take issue with, especially you Princess Marathon runners, I get it. Comment below. Please subscribe and like. I'm so glad you joined me. I hope I'll see you at one of the Run Disney races, and happy running.